So today, as promised, we have a special guest here, and she's here to share her testimony. I'm gonna let her introduce herself and yeah, tell the people who you are. And I don't know if you want to start with some of your opening statements about maybe let them know a bit about how you grew up, your family life, and those type of things, and we'll go from there.
Okay. So hi, my name is Priya. As Dale just mentioned, I'll be sharing my testimony today. I grew up in a non-Christian home as a Hindu. My dad is Hindu, my mom's Muslim, and my brother and I we were basically Hindu by default. I usually say, because we my dad usually take us to Mandir, and we just we kind of grew up going to Mandir all the time for most of our lives at least. And so, we got more and more involved. We got deeper into faith. And so, yeah. And I remember there's this one time in our childhood where my brother and I were trying to figure out if we should be a Hindu or a Muslim. And so my brother was saying, if we're a Muslim, we'll hurt our dad's feelings. If we're a Hindu, we'll hurt our mom's feelings. We were very very young at this time, and so my brother was like, you know what, we'll just be Christians. And but yeah, we were both Hindus. I remember always having this great love for God. I've always been excited whenever there's any religious occasion. I've always I just wanted to like grow closer to God. And yeah. So I'm just gonna tell you a little bit about my childhood. I grew up in a very loving home. I consider myself and my brother very fortunate to have had the parents that God blessed us with. They're just they're so caring, so loving. They did so much for us, and what way more than we could ever ask for. They try to give us everything in life, and for that I'm always so thankful. And there's times where we feel like we often take things for granted, and I feel like in my childhood there are things that I was so privileged to have that I didn't even realize that not everyone had this type of life. For example, like every special occasion, whether it's like anniversaries or birthdays, or even Valentine's Day, our parents always had us do everything together as a family. And that is something that my parents are always very big on. A typical Sunday for us was my dad would take my brother and I to Mandir. When we come home, we would have lunch, and late after lunch, and we always eat together as a family at a table. There was never like one person eating at like the in front of the TV and someone. We all always together. We sit together, we pray together, and we have our meals together. uh, Something that one of my a very fond memory for me in my childhood was when I was in primary school. My mom used to bring my lunch every lunch time. My mom would bring my brother and I lunch to the canteen. She had a friend. They would come together, and this was for at least a few years. So a fond memory I had in my childhood was when it was in primary school. My mom used to bring my well, she's friends with one of my brother's classmates. His grandmother and her were friends, and they used to come every lunchtime to our school canteen, and they would have our like hot lunch they just prepared. And we, after, for our lunch break, we would come to the canteen and we'd have our lunch there. And I remember it was until when one of my classmates told me, Priya, you're so lucky that, you have like all these, your mom comes and bring lunch for you every day, and you have this hot food you're eating every day, and it's all fresh for me, I sometimes I just bring crackers or something, and I don't have. I wish I had like my mom to do this for me. And what was crazy was before she told me this, I used to be like, man, I wish I had a lunch bag. I wish I had, this Barbie lunch bag or my own water bottle, and it was only like when she told me this, that's when I realized how fortunate I was, you know? And another thing that is my parents never really give my brother and I chores to do because they were very big on us like focusing on our education. So we never really had that, and I thought that was normal for like every child. It was like when it was only when one of my classmates told me, oh, they had to like clean the yard today, they had to sweep the yard, or they had to go do dishes, or before coming to school, or they had to iron their uniforms. And I was like, whoa, I actually, you know, my mom did all that for me, I didn't have to worry about that. And yeah, even when we got older, and my brother and I started our like tertiary education, I our dad just took care of all of our fees. We didn't even have to like work while we are studying. He told us, both my parents told us, just focus on your education. They'll take care of the fees and everything, and again, like I had friends there that were working just so that they can be able to pay for their education. So, I these are things that made me like realize how fortunate I am, to have such amazing parents who they just wanted the best for us. Even when we started working, they told us, just save your money for your future. You don't have to pay any of our bills. We take care of that. You just and I'm like, it's crazy because I never I always thought that every child had this. It was only when I meet certain people and they're telling me, and I'm like, whoa, like I didn't know, you know? And yeah, I've had like a really close relationship with both my parents, but it was in different ways. For my dad, I was always we had like this very affectionate type of relationship where if he leaves home like 10 times a day, each time, whatever I'm doing, I could be like having lunch, I could be sleeping, whatever I'm doing, not sleeping, like I could be having lunch, I could be studying, whatever. I would drop whatever I'm doing and I would run to him and I'd give him a hug and a kiss. When he comes home, I'd, the same thing. I would run to him, give him a hug and kiss. If I was sleeping, my dad would come in the room and he'd give me a kiss before he leaves. And that's like the type of relationship we had, you know? But my mom, I wasn't as affectionate with her, but she would have her hugs and kisses. It's just not as much as I would with my dad. But my mom and she was someone who I can share anything with, whatever was on my mind. She was like my go-to person, and she is actually the reason I love cooking. It's as a child, I've always been amazed at how she would use these simple ingredients and make a food taste so good. And so I remember whenever she's in the kitchen, I would drop my toys, whether it's my dolls or my teacup sets. I would drop everything and I'd run to the kitchen and I would stand there. I remember I was so small I couldn't even see over the countertop. So I couldn't see what she was doing. But I would just stand there and I'd observe her. And as I got older, she would start getting me involved in the cooking. Like she would have like she started asking me to like pass her these ingredients. And then the second thing was she started having me like cut some of the vegetables, but I had to use my plastic knife. I couldn't use. It was only when I reached like a certain age where she allowed me to use like the actual knife. But yeah, that was a little of my childhood. Uh, at the age of 14, I had my first encounter with evil spirit, and my maternal grandmother lived with us since I was born, and she had a seizure at the time. And I don't know, somehow in the midst of that, something happened, and I saw an evil spirit, and in I remember I couldn't sleep for a whole week. My parents were obviously worried. They had me like they even like asked me to sleep. I slept in their bed with them in the hope that I won't be afraid. I wasn't even sure what I was afraid of until my parents, my dad actually spoke to someone, a religious leader, and he said that I saw a spirit, and they gave me things to wear to protect myself, but they said that I can still see these things, but they just can't do anything to me. They can't harm me. They can't possess me. But yeah, but I'm because I'm protected. But over some time, because this encounter, like you know, seeing these things, it wasn't just a one time something. It's been like after that first encounter, I started having many encounters with spirits, and I remember one season I had this. It felt like there was this thing attached to my back, like a spirit. I couldn't see what he looked like, but like I don't know if it's like a spiritual thing, but because I know what he looks like. I couldn't see him in with my eyes, but I it's like a feeling. I just know like what he looks like. It so it was like it was like kind of glued onto my back, and like his head was looking down but his eyes were looking up, and it was just a scary image, and it felt like it was glued onto my back, and it was like following me all over. I could not be alone anywhere, and I was afraid of it, but I couldn't get rid of it. If I was going to classes, if I was going to work, wherever I was, it was there, you know and since that, it was only now that I kind of realized this, but around that time started uh, I started getting depressed. And this depression just kept getting worse and worse. I even developed a very low self-esteem. I just, I didn't see myself as pretty. I started suddenly finding all these flaws in myself, and there was a time where I found out that what, these things don't like spirits. They don't like garlic. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna I'm just gonna give this a try because I just want these things to leave me alone. And because it's like at a point where you're like, and there are moments where I just question myself. I'm like, why me? Why couldn't I have a normal life? Why did I have to see these things all the time? And I was just tired of it. And so I decided one night I grated a few cloves of garlic and I rubbed my whole body with it, with the hope that these things would just leave me alone. And not even knowing that there were certain like parts of your body that are very sensitive. And my body just started burning, started paining really bad. And I had no idea like how bad it was. But in the moment, I just told myself, okay, it's a small sacrifice. At least these things are going to leave you alone. And I don't think I slept that night because of the pain. But when I got up in the morning, that's when I realized how bad it really was. I uh, There was like burn marks like all over my body, and it was because of the garlic. And I remember having like it was very painful to like shower, or if I want to use a washroom because the my clothes would be pasted onto the burns. So every time I want to shower, for example, I have to like pull the clothes off of my burn, and it was very painful. It was like ripping off a band-aid from a wound and like continuously, like it was very very painful. And so that didn't work because the the spirits were still there. I was still falling more and more into depression. And, there was a time where I just started listening to rock music because I felt a sense of comfort. Like it's just the words were very comforting to me at the time and very relatable. And so as for a little while, that kind of helped me a bit. But when think it, but when that stopped working, I started self harm because there was a time where like the pain was just so much that it was my whole body just felt very numb, and the only thing that felt like could help was that. And then when that start like not like stopped working or stopped helping, I remember there were times where I took like an entire card of Panadol tablets. I took the entire card and just like drank that. I had no idea even like what a side effect of that could have been, but thank God, like by the grace of God, nothing happened. But like these were extreme steps I took to just try to get rid of the pain and just try to like be at peace, like just to find peace, because it felt like I was being tormented day and night, and it felt like I was living in a nightmare that I couldn't get wake up out of. Like when you have a bad dream, you wake up, that's the end of it. For me, it was, I was just facing this every single day, and like my depression just kept getting worse and worse, and as each day went by. And after some time, I developed a sleeping disorder called sleep paralysis. This is where your brain, uh, usually when someone falls asleep, your brain thinks that it paralyzes every muscle in your body, so you don't act out in your dream. But when someone's so in sleep paralysis, I'm awake, but my brain thinks I'm still sleeping. So I'm awake in a paralyzed state because it's my muscles are still paralyzed. But it's not just that. No, but like for me in the sleep paralysis, while experiencing that, is for me it just lasts like maybe 30 seconds or so. But in that 30 seconds, it felt like it was just horrible because in that moment it felt like every few seconds there was like these shock waves just like shocking my whole body, and then there are moments where I couldn't breathe properly. There are moments where i I woke up. I actually woke up out of the sleep paralysis. I needed like 10 to 15 minutes to just recover from what just happened, and it drained me a lot, you know and just having to deal with all of these things, because it just like kept getting worse and worse. The depression, the low self-esteem, these demonic experiences, the sleep paralysis. It got to a point where it was so much that I became suicidal. One day I was in the kitchen one afternoon. I picked up a knife, and I wanted to like stab myself. I just wanted to be at peace. I just wanted it all to end. It was too much. But before I could have done anything, my parents came to my mind. And, the first thing I thought of is I can't do this to my parents. They mean the world to me. And I don't want to have to put them through this for the rest of their lives. I don't want them to be labeled whenever they walk on the road, that, oh, those people, their daughter killed herself. I don't want them to have to hear that for the rest of their lives. I don't want to put my parents through that torment. And I told myself from that day that I would face whatever happens. I'm going to face it. I will deal with it, however. But I'm not going to put my parents through this. And I was ready to, and I kind of give up on life and being happy. And I just told myself that this is what my life is going to look like for the rest of my life, as long as I'm here. It's I couldn't see anything beyond that moment. I didn't know any that there was hope. And that's the reason why I'm sharing these things, because it's very personal. It's very it's not it, these are things I thought I would have taken to my grave. I don't think my parents know about some of these things, because I tried so well to hide it. I There was a time where I just stood in front of my mirror, and I would just try to practice how to fake a smile, how to fake a laugh. So it's just easier for me to like do that than to explain to someone what's wrong, because I don't even want to talk about it. So it was even hard for my family to probably even guess that, I was depressed, and but when I think about it, this started with when I had my first experience with these demonic things. So for me, I believe, like when you have these things, when you're experiencing these things, the low self-esteem, the depression, everything, these are all like things that comes with, seeing these demonic or having them around you. And it's like they feed off of it. And so they put you maybe in a state of depression because they feed off of their sadness. It's just, but yeah. Um, yeah, so at the age of 19, I got my first job, and I loved this job. It was something I've always wanted to do. However, this work environment had spirit, an evil spirit there. It was a male spirit. I used to see him. I've only worked at this place for 3 months, but I used to see this evil, this demon, whatever you call it. I see it every day, and it was a tall male, and there were times where he would be so close to me. Like I'll be at my computer, and because he's so tall, he would like kind of stoop down beside me, and he'd be staring at my screen. And I was like, if he's not bothering me, I'm not gonna see any. Like, I'm not gonna, it's okay. Or at least, I thought that was okay. And after some time, he uh he started saying things like, he started calling my name first, and then after that he started saying things like, I will kill you. And it was, I believe it was in February of that year, that was 2012. I fell down this. It was kind of like I slipped down the stairs from one of my from my workplace, and within a week after that, I had a second fall, and I knew that it was him because within that 1 week between the first and the second fall, it felt like he was trying like to do things to make me fall. Like I remember one morning when I was coming up the stairs to my desk, it felt like when I reached the top stair, it was like a string that was there, like it felt like it was tied to the two ends to trip me. But I was holding on like to the rail really tight, and I took my time when I was walking up. So when I felt that, I looked down and I tried, but there wasn't anything there. But but a little after that, I believe it was the same day, I fell for the second time, and this time it was worse because I developed a migraine from this fall. But the speed I was falling with, it was like 5 to 6 stairs down. I With the speed I fell with, I tried to like push like to like get up, but my entire body shifted to the left side, and I hit my head on like 5 to 6 stairs down, and I developed an instant migraine from that day. My whole left side of my body was swollen on that day. But this migraine, over the years, it just kept getting worse and worse. So I've been to many doctors, and I've had like I tried so many different types of medication. I've even over the counter ones. I've been to doctors in Jamaica, in the U.S., and no one really helped. And yeah, so that was even with the spiritual thing. I've been to many people, both Hindus, Muslim. I did so many different rituals. I've done like so many things, but there's nothing that truly helped. I wanted to, because I felt like I was crippled by fear for most of my life. This was 13 years before knowing Christ. And, these 13 years, it felt like 13 years of living in hell, you know. It was like 13 of like the hardest years. But the thing is, it wasn't like, you know, I, one of the things I'm grateful for again is having an amazing supportive family. In the midst of that, they may not have known about my depression, but they knew about the my problem with the spirits. And they every time we have like a blackout, like in Guyana, especially at night, everyone would drop what they're doing and they'd run to my room because I would be frozen in fear. I was afraid of the dark. I couldn't sleep by myself because every time I tried to, I would have like these things like in the dead of night, I would hear like these demonic chantings in my ear. I would hear things like I will kill you. My bed feels like it's moving and I can feel the presence in the room that's just trying to scare me and I would be frozen in fear and I couldn't sleep. So I spent like most of my life, I couldn't sleep by myself, and it was hard because I was 27 years old when I got saved. But it's hard, like feeling like you're in someone's space, like you can't give people, anyone, privacy because there you have to you can't sleep by yourself, so you're in someone else's room. I'm going to talk a bit about something that uh, caused me to sort of drift away from Hinduism. There was There's this Indian, I would call it like a religious series that I was watching at a time about with these Hindu gods and goddesses. And there was this particular episode that I saw with this Hindu goddess. She there was she had to like fight this demonic army of men, and there was a big army, and it was too much for her to fight, so she created a women army of bloodthirsty women to defeat this demonic army. And when all of the demons were destroyed, the women army, they were still, because they were created as bloodthirsty, they needed blood to feed off of, and they started asking her for food, the goddess. And so the goddess, she in order to feed them, she cut her head off, and she had her head in her hand, and there was a fountain of blood from her neck pouring into the head that was on her hand, and somehow that fed the demonic art, the women that she created. And for me, so there was just something about that didn't feel right. Like I was still Hindu, I still, had this, like I still had love for the gods that I was worshiping at the time, but something about this felt sort of evil. And when I did my research, there's actually a Hindu goddess that that is like this. So this isn't just something I watched that was made up. It was actually one that exists, but there was just something about the image that just felt wrong to me, and I just started drifting apart from the religion, and I started believing that there's one God, but different religions or different roads to that leads to the same God. And so my prayer, I used to pray every night before going to bed. I still do, but my prayer changed, and I started being more open to other gods. So instead of just praying to the Hindu gods, I started calling on other gods' names, and I started like calling their names based on their level of, for me, level of importance or level of power or favor. So I started off with the Hindu gods. Then I went on to, I called Allah second, because obviously my mom's Muslim, so I would say Allah second. And third, I called in Jesus. And fourth, I called on Sai Baba. And yeah, these were the four I was. So I felt like, when I think about this now, I felt like I was just opening up to every religion at this time. So I went from being someone who loved and was so devoted to Hindu gods to being someone who was open to just to all gods, And I usually say when in my prayer, I usually say I love you to my gods, and so I started saying that to each of them, including Jesus. In January 2019, this was there was a lot happening this month. I this was a kind of a difficult month. A lot happened. Within my family, there was some problems going on, and even in my relationship with my now ex, everything felt like it was falling apart. And yeah, I just felt like, like all of these relationships that meant so much to me, it was just, everything was a mess. It was all just, and I felt alone. I felt like I was in a dark place. But then one night, I was in the shower, and there was in the room there was like the presence of like these evil spirits like filling the room one after the next. They kept appearing. I could just feel the presence, and I can feel the heaviness in the room. And usually in this in these moments, I would, and this is the first time that I've ever felt more than one of these demons in the room at the same time. But and usually, like, if whenever I have these encounters, I would, like, there are these Hindu gods I would call on. I would chant chalices. I would say mantras. But this time, like this moment, I just subconsciously started calling on Jesus. I just kept saying Jesus, 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 and like so many times, and until I actually realized what I was saying. And then when I did realize it, I was really confused, because no one in my family, no one in my home actually is Christian. But so yeah, I was just a little confused about that, like what was happening. But after that, I went to my parents later that night, and I told them what happened. And my mom said, it's okay. Jesus is a Messiah. He's a good person. That don't worry about it. But and that made me feel better. But there was something about that night, something about me calling Jesus just like that. It just felt like you know, it just felt like It just made me wanted to know more about him, And so I started. I downloaded the Bible app on my phone, and I started reading the Bible. My taste in music somehow changed. I started listening to gospel song, and for after some time, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to listen to secular music anymore, because when I listen to gospel music, there's this feeling that I get, like it feels like there's a bridge from my heart going straight to where God is, and that's like this connection I feel to God, with God. And so I'm like, I'd rather listen to this type of music. If it's something that's bringing me closer to God, then I want to listen to this. I started listening to Christian motivational videos on YouTube, and like, and I watched like the Jesus movie, and whatever Jesus said, I listened to him keenly. And if I missed something, I would just go back and try to listen to it again. And like, I just suddenly like started having this love for Jesus, and I wanted to do whatever Jesus said we should do, and I remember in April for my birthday, there was this, it's my birthday that year, April 2019, fell on a Hindu religious day. And my dad asked me to go to the altar to pray. And, but the thing is, at this point, I just had like so much love for Jesus that I didn't want to go to the altar, but I just didn't know how to tell my dad. But so I just went, anyways, and I prayed and I got up. But when I got up, I just felt like this is not something I wanted to do. So as soon as I got up, I went into my room I remember I just closed the door and I went to my knees. And I remember I just had my hands out and I was like, I'm sorry, Jesus. I didn't want to go to the altar. I don't want to serve that God anymore. I want to serve you. I want you to be my God. I want to give my life to you. I want you to just come and just take control of everything for me. And, and that was for me, that was my moment of saying, I'm, I want to serve Jesus now. That was my moment of saying, yeah, I don't want to serve any other God because everything else it just didn't feel right, and in March that year, I had a dream about the Antichrist. At this time, I mean, I grew up in a Muslim and a Hindu home, so I don't know anything much about Jesus. I was now learning about him. I didn't know anything about the Antichrist. I only knew that he was a bad person because but that's all I knew. But in this dream, I was in this very dark place. It felt like a tunnel. I don't know what it was, but there were like straight to the front and center of this cave or whatever it was. It was like this big water bag. It's like a water bag that a baby is in, but like a big adult sized one. And there was this creature that suddenly burst out of it. And the first thing he said was, I have to go look for the Antichrist. And like a few seconds after he said that, he was like, wait, I am the Antichrist. And the moment he realized that, he said in a loud and a scary voice, he was like, bow down to me. And out of fear, and that was when I saw like there were so many people in the room. There were like hundreds, maybe thousands of people in the room. But because the place was so dark, I didn't see them at first. But they were all bowing down to him. And out of fear, because he looked scary and he sounds scary, I was about to bow down to him. But then I realized if I do this, I'm not going to go to heaven. So I was standing up and I did not bow down to him. I was the only one not bowing down to him. So he was able to see me right away. And I could sense this anger in him, and I felt like he was gonna kill me. And he came to me with speed, like he was going to kill me. And I remember, I just said Jesus in that dream, and some force just pushed him straight back to the front where he was, and he was like at a very far distance from where I was. And then I remember like he came back again, but with more speed, and I said Jesus again. And and every time this kept happening, he kept getting more angry. He kept coming to me with more speed, and I kept saying Jesus, and that force just like kept pushing him back to the front. And then the scene changed, like in the dream. And at this point, he had like his hands were like claws, and it was on my neck. And I know that he was, again, I felt like he was going to kill me. That was what he had intended to do. But I said Jesus again, and whatever this force was, it just pushed him off of me. And then the scene changed again. In this other scene, it was like I was in a foreign country. And I said foreign because at the time I was still in Guyana. So when the scene changed, it was, and I knew this is not Guyana because there was skyscrapers all over. But this scene was very chaotic. There were people running in all different directions, and they were like frustrated. There was these demonic creatures in white clothing. Some were in the air, some were on the ground. They were attacking people, and there were these skyscrapers that were falling down. There were like planes crashing into it. It felt like there was natural disasters and everything all happening at once. And I remember trying to lead people to like a safe place, and then we decided to like just split up and go our different ways. But like it was just a chaotic scene. And then suddenly the scene changed again, and I was in Guyana at our national park there, and it was me, my parents, and my brother. We were all in this white vehicle, and there were these demonic creatures again attacking people. There were the Antichrist hovering in the air over everything. And while I was in this vehicle, I felt somehow this not somehow safe in this white vehicle. Even though these like demons and spirits, they can come through, like, they can pass through vehicles or walls. I didn't feel like they could have harmed us in this vehicle. But when I looked outside at the park bench, there was my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, there. And so my mom ran out to get her, to bring her in the vehicle. But at that time, I saw the Antichrist hovering over them. And he before I could see what happened next, the scene changed. Sorry, the I woke up. So yeah, that was my dream of the Antichrist. Um, Again, I did not know anything about him. It was after having this dream, that's when I shared it with a few of my Christian friends, and that's when they told me who he was. But yeah, on May that year, I had an out of body experience. So this one night, I was waiting for you. When my ex and I were dating, we usually talk on Skype every night. This was a long distance relationship, so we were in two different countries. So he works late at night, and so I was waiting for him to come home from work so we can chat. While waiting for him, I decided to just lie down because I was getting a migraine. And while I was lying down, I just started making up a random song in my mind, and I just started singing this to Jesus. And just like that, I had my eyes closed, and I know that I was not asleep, nor was I I felt like I was not asleep, nor was I fully awake. But I felt like my spirit, it just like it came out of my body and it went up. And this place that I was in, I was just there for like a few seconds, but all I saw in this place was the branch of a tree, and there was this light, this very bright light. It felt like this. It looks like a 2 p.m. kind of sunlight. It's very very sharp, but I was not feeling any heat. But there's also this overwhelming sense of peace and happiness. It was like nothing we had ever experienced here. It was like so overwhelming, and even to say overwhelming, it's like that's not even like truly describing how big this is. Like it's just, I've never experienced anything like this before. And there's no negative thing in this place. It was just good thing, good feelings, good energy. And I just wanted to stay there, but unfortunately I was just there for a few seconds. And then I felt like I went up, I felt like my spirit went up slowly, but when it came back down, it came back really fast, and so when I came back down, I felt, and I opened my eyes. I saw that I was in my bed still. And I felt so sad. I was so disappointed because I didn't want to leave that place. I don't know where that place was, but it's just this feeling of just being so much at peace, and so much joy, so much happiness there. And I didn't want to leave. But I closed my eyes and I went back to that place uh, three more times that night. And then when I woke up after the third time, I saw like, my ex was ready to he was home. And so we chat for maybe an hour. And then after I went to bed, later that night, I went back to that place. I had the exact same experience. I was there for the few seconds, like maybe 3 seconds or so. But everything, the detail, everything was the same. And yeah, it was just a place I wish, I just did not want to leave. Then on June 4th, this was all on May 29th that year. On June 4th, I had the same experience again. It was a few seconds longer, but it was the same experience. Okay. On June 21st, I had this dream. I was it was at night, myself, and I was walking on the road with someone, but it didn't seem like we were in Guyana, and it seemed like a very, I don't know, it was an abandoned area for some reason, and we were just walking, and then I remember looking on the ground, and then as I looked on the ground, I saw like someone's feet, and as I kept looking up, I saw the rest of the body, but in front of me was it was Jesus, and in when you in dreams you just know things, so he didn't even like had to introduce himself to me. I already knew who he was, and he had like this. He was just glowing all over, and he had brown hair. His clothes was white, and what I always pictured, like if I were to see Jesus, the number of like you'd be maybe you'd like bow down, you'd worship him or something. But you know, when I saw him, it was like I knew him, like we knew each other for so long, like I knew him my whole life. We conversed and we had like a conversation. I just don't remember what it was that we talked about, but we actually spoke, and I it was not just that, it was also the feeling that I got when I saw Jesus. It was the same feeling I experienced when I had that out of body experience. It was this peace that is overwhelming, sense of like happiness that I got when I saw Jesus. It was just like you just didn't want to leave. Like you just wanted to be in his presence. You just wanted to be like knowing the past that I had, where I always like the extreme measures I took to be happy, to be at peace. When you're actually in the presence and you actually experience it, you don't wanna come out of that. And even like it's like you never truly know what peace is until you experience it. And when being in that presence, it's like, you know, I didn't want it to end. So yeah, when I that was my Jesus dream, I remembered there was a lot that happened that year, and I kind of wanted to start over, and I wanted to come here to Canada to start over. But growing up in a home where my parents have always been protective of me, it was hard. It was a crazy thing to ask my parents to like take to like to approve of me coming to a different country to study, to start over, and to so. But so I asked my dad about this. I was very serious. I wanted to just start over. I wanted to be independent. I don't want to have to rely on my whatever my dad achieved in life. I looked at that as his achievement, and I wanted to be able to achieve something for myself. I wanted to build a life for myself, start from nothing, build to something, and so, and I also just wanted to start over too. So I remember asking my dad, and he said no. Of course, he was upset that I would even think of moving to another country by myself. And after the third time, I remembered just being very disappointed. I went to my room, I locked the door, and I remember crying all day into the night. And I called on Jesus. And I just kept saying, that I would just ask him, I would say, I don't want to spend the rest of my life like this. I want to be able to serve you. I want to be able to do something for myself. I want to be able to make a life for myself and just, go out there and be independent and, have achieve my own things in life. and I know I won't be doing this alone. I know that you're gonna be doing this with me. 2019 has been a year where a lot happened, and I felt like I wanted to start over, and so I wanted to come to Canada to study and to just uh, build a life for myself here and just start over. But being someone who's been sheltered most of my life, it was a crazy thing to ask my parents for, because my dad, he got upset when I asked him, and he, from it was crazy for me to think that I never even caught a bus in Guyana. I still don't know how to take a bus in Guyana. So for me to come to another country where it's not like they can drive and see me, they have to get a like book a flight and come and see me. It was crazy, but so every time I asked my dad, he would be upset and he would say no, and I kept trying for some reason. And after the third time, I remember uh, I just went into my room and I just started crying, and I just like started talking to God, and this was something I really wanted. And like I was there crying from morning until the night. I was, yeah. And later in the night, I heard this voice say to me, "You're going to Canada, and I'll be there with you. Ask your dad one more time." And I remember it was like I knew who this voice was, because at this time I learned about like the voice of the Holy Spirit, and I knew that this voice, whatever it said to me, I knew that this was something that is true. And I remember the following morning I woke up, because this was late in the night. The following morning I woke up and I prayed, and so conveniently, a friend of mine told me a Bible verse from the book of Mark that says, "Whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you will receive it and it will be yours." And so I prayed and I told God, I believe that my dad is going to say yes to this. And after praying, I went and I asked my dad, and he had his he was upset again. But this time, I just called on God in after, and suddenly, right after I called on Jesus, my dad was like, what, do whatever you think is right. So I took that as an approval. And of course, I asked my mom to confirm later, just to make sure that it's a yes. But yeah, it was, that's, for me, that was a very big barrier that Jesus broke through, because, growing up in a very sheltered home, my parents, I felt like they shielded me from the world. And there was so much that, you know, I, I didn't know. And so after getting that approval, I already well, before I even asked my dad to come to Canada, I already researched the school that I wanted to attend, and so I had everything figured out. So a few days before applying to come to the school to come to Canada, I had an angelic experience. This was in August 2019. I remember lying down. It was an afternoon. I was lying down in my bed, and I had my eyes closed, and somehow I felt like a presence in the room. But this wasn't like the usual, like the evil, like dark, scary presence. This was a good one. This was something that was positive. This was, and it's like I had my eyes closed, but I know what it looked like. It was like a female, and I felt like it was an angel. And I remember she kissed me on my cheek, and after that, like I couldn't open my eyes right away, but I remember it felt like so real, like it could, like when my dad would come and kiss me before he leaves. But it wasn't, he wasn't home at that time. But I knew this was a good presence. I know there was an angel. And after a few seconds, I opened my eyes and there was no one there. I got up and yeah, and there was no one anywhere near my room at the time. You know, but yeah. Um, in November that year, I had another angelic experience. I woke up in this tunnel where it led me to this place. It felt like like a Hindu wedding, and after leaving, and while I was there, there was this lady that asked me to come with her, to follow her, and so I went with her, and I felt like a child somehow following someone. But she took me to a place, and it was me and a few other people, and she told me not everyone gets to see this place. Only few are chosen, and you're one of them. And later in that dream, I remembered I left my black purse at the wedding. So I decided to go back and look for that. And when I went back in the tunnel, the part that I went in, it was a dead end. So the other side of the tunnel where the wedding was, where I came from the beginning, it was like it was never there. And so the tunnel started to like cave in, so I kind of ran out. And at the entrance of the tunnel, there was this person standing there, and I told them what happened, and they looked at me like I was crazy because that tunnel apparently had a dead end. But then in the midst of that, the lady that I met at the beginning that asked me to follow her, she appeared and she took my hand and she said, "She's with me." But when I looked at her, she looked like an angel. Like I had that in the dream, you just know things, and in that moment, I knew that this was an angel that was there. So she took me back to the place that she took me to in the beginning, but not by now. It's night, so we went up the stairs into this place, and there were lots of like toys and it felt like there was like stuff for children there, and there was this room that was green. It was painted in green, and you know the I remember like looking at some toys, and I was like, oh, my sister would like these. But yeah, like the dream ended like that. But fast forward to January 26th, 2020, that was the date I got baptized at. And I remembered when I went upstairs to change for my baptism, when I, like, that entire thing, the way the place looked, it was exactly like my dream in November 2019. This was 2 months before, and I believe that dream was November 17, 2019. But yeah, and the thing is, I looked at that as at this time, by the way, I didn't know the pastor. I was still asking people, and I had like at least 10 different pastors, but I've been praying and I've been asking God to choose a pastor for me because I just didn't want to be baptized by anyone. I wanted to be baptized by someone chosen by God. And as crazy as that sounds. And for me, having that dream and then seeing that place, that exact place that I dreamt of with that angel and everything, seeing like going to that place 2 months later, it felt to me like that was God confirming that I've answered your prayer. And so yeah.
You did mention sort of having this uh relationship with God and having multiple deities. And you did mention this one point where you sort of just wanted to serve Jesus alone. And so, would you say that's the point where all of these things sort of fell apart? All the Hinduism and the other deities that you were sort of like, talking to, you sort of like totally abandoned that and just became a Christian at that point.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, that was the moment because God has been showing me so many different things. And, you know, there were moments, even now, you know, when I've had like, I still get like these, I still see these things, these spirits, I still have these encounters with them, but it's different now, because every time I say the name Jesus, they leave, and they will come to my home and they try to scare me. And I just say Jesus and they leave. There are times where I can't even sleep at night. And I mean, I came from, not being able to sleep by myself in my own room. I was afraid of the dark before knowing Jesus. Now I'm living in a home by myself. I can sleep without the lights on, and in my own bed. I don't even have like a roommate or no one compared to back home in Guyana where I had my family there with me. So, there's a big change, and this was all because of Jesus. I there was one night, right now the place I'm living, I remember there one night I felt the presence of like so many demons in the room. Again, it felt like they were trying to scare me. And I felt like, in my opinion, I felt like they were planning this for so long. But this one night, I was just so tired, and I'm like I really wanted to sleep, and I'm like, I don't have the energy for this tonight, and I just went to bed and I slept. I woke up in the morning, and obviously there's nothing there. But I woke up in the morning, and I was like, I just thought to myself, these things probably felt so stupid. Like this was like the most like I felt in like they try to like cover like there was like a big like a lot of them in the room that night, and I guess they thought by having so many of them, I would be afraid. But I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna go sleep, and you know, there's a difference in in that Pryah compared to the Pryah that was, that didn't know Christ, because usually I'll be frozen in fear and I pray, but like now it's like I don't have to like wonder or hope about things. It's like I know God is there. I know nothing can touch me. I just like the moment I had my first experience with Jesus, it was like he came and he stayed. He never left my side, and it's like even now I can still feel his presence with me, and it's that presence that makes me feel like safe and secure. Like I know no matter what happens, I know that these things can't touch me, and I know I'm gonna be okay.
You mentioned also seeing. I'm a little familiar with your testimony, and you mentioned seeing Nathan Phillips Square. And
Yes, that was something I missed. I realized afterwards. This was in my Antichrist dream. So that place, that scene where it was very chaotic, I like so that happened in March of 2019, and in on April 17th, 2021, I was reading the news on my phone, and I saw a photo attached to a story. I have it saved, but that was the exact area that was in my dreams. In my dream, 2 year, like 25 months ago, and so yeah, and I'm sorry.
so you seen Nathan Phillips Square before you
That
even knew
was
it
in the
existed.
Yeah, that was in the
Wow. So, you know, you came from having depression, not being able to sleep, having suicide. I mean, having the, I want to use the word, uh, the idea of unaliving yourself, being tormented by spirits, to having this extreme freedom and confidence in Christ and whatnot. But, there are a lot of people who might be watching this who might be under sort of the same sort of demonic oppression. First of all, like, what would you say to someone who maybe is watching this and thinking, that stuff is just crazy, that like that doesn't exist, like that never happened, like you're just, like these are, myths or fairy tales, or you're making this up, this is happening in your mind, and none of that stuff is real, like demonic and the spirit realm, and like, that type of things aren't really real. What would you say to that person?
Well, the thing is, I never even thought of like spirits or anything like that before, but until I started experiencing it. So it was hard for me to not believe in something that I'm experiencing. And also, if there's if there's good in the world, there's also evil. If there's a God, then and you believe there's a devil, then devil has like things doing his work. So I would say that if that these things do exist, and for me, I've experienced it so many times, and even it's definitely
There are some things within, again, I am familiar with your testimony. There are some things that you've said to me personally, that you can't mention, and because of course there's other people who you love that are in your life who are also, sort of involved in these situations, and so it is difficult when you're sharing your testimony to sort of be able to say everything that happened, uh throughout these experiences. But of course these are very real and tangible experiences that you had. These are, and other members of your families and things like that have experienced and are still experiencing. And so in that light, what would you say to people who are experiencing the things that you have been through, and what encouragement would you give them? And what would you like to say to someone who's facing that type of, depression and anxiety and oppression by demonic spirits, and facing, thoughts of unaliving themselves and those type of things? What would you like to say to people in general, like anybody really listening to this whole, to your testimony? And also thank you for coming on here and sharing and being open and being willing to sort of do the work in the will of God. And yeah, just go ahead.
Yeah, I would say give your life to Christ. I've been exposed to two other religions, and you know, when I was at my lowest, that was when I had my encounters with Christ. For 13 years, I've been to one person after the next, like trying to help me. I did so many things, but all I ever had to say was Jesus. I just had to say one name. And I'm speaking from my experience, saying there's power in that name. And I didn't even know that, what that Christians say there's power in that name until I've experienced that power, and many times, like, I just say Jesus when these things are around, and I can see they're afraid of that name. I can see they leave right away. That name has power, it has authority. It's like, as it was written, it's a name that is above every other name.
Woo,
And
amazing.
it's also, the Bible has so many comforting words, and it's not just words, they're powerful. For me, I felt like I was crippled by fear my whole life, and In the Bible, I read things like, "Fear not, for I'm always with you." And when I read that for the first time, I started crying because I was like, you're saying to like to don't be afraid, and you're always with me. You mean you're not gonna be here and then you leave after you save me from something, and then you come back when I call you? You're gonna always be there with me? That was a big thing for me. And then I read verses like, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. These are, and there's so many other words, there's so many other verses and things that relates. There's something in there for everyone, something in there to comfort you in every situation. And so there's even Christ's love. you know I like there's these things that God does for us. And for me, I've had this problem with my self-esteem since I was a teenager. And when I started learning about Christ, and I started telling myself, I don't want to see myself like this anymore, because I learned that when if I don't like myself, then it's more than just me. It's about God, and He created me in His image. So if I don't like His creation, it's like someone saying to you, "Oh, you spend so much time and making a special meal for someone, and they don't like it." I don't want to be that person to God. And so I just started praying and asking God to help me to see myself the way He sees me, because I don't see myself that way, and I don't want to continue to see myself the way I am at that moment. And there's a random time, like, and it's crazy. People would say, "Okay, this is just a coincidence," but of all the time, during this season, while I was praying for this, random people would come up to me at bus stops or wherever, and they'll be like, "Wow, you're so pretty," and those people don't even know what I was struggling with at that time. But they just came to me and they said that. And this is something I always encourage, like other people. It takes nothing out of you to be kind. If you have something nice to say to someone, say it, because you don't know what they're going through. What you like, I was struggling with self-esteem, and these people didn't even know that that was my thing, and they came up to me and just say, "You're pretty, you're beautiful," And even recently, someone said that to me. And they don't even know how much they're helping you with something that you've been struggling for years. So yeah, I would say to others, like, just if you have something negative to say to someone, like a negative comment, just don't say it. If it's not worth it, just don't say it, because you don't know what that person's going through behind the scenes. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And on that
Sorry.
note, so
Sorry,
did you want to say?
there's one more thing
Go
I wanted
ahead.
to say.
Yeah.
So one more thing I would like to say to someone who's watching this video is, you know, something I learned from Jesus is forgiveness. I found it. I used to be someone who found it really hard to forgive someone, and to truly forgive and to let go. I would say, "Yeah, I forgive you," but I'll never forget what you did to me. And it was through Christ that I learned that true forgiveness comes with letting go, forgetting it, and moving on. There was a parable that Jesus said, and I'm just gonna say it in a nutshell. It's between a king and his servant. But Jesus, in a nutshell, Jesus meant that if we don't know where forgiveness is, then how can we forgive? How can we expect God to forgive us for our sins? And this is because this king forgave his servant. The servant was in
A
debt to
great, yeah,
him.
in a great debt. And
And yeah.
yeah, and then he went out and he was shaking down another debtor that owed him a much less significant amount. And the servants of the king saw this and knew that this king had forgiven this individual of such a great debt. And so they found that you know at least strange, and they decided to bring that to the attention of the king, who then found that to be sort of like, just this like unacceptable, and then took this individual and basically said, hey man, like I forgave you of such a great debt, how come you couldn't forgive this person? Why you out here shaking down someone for such a insignificant amount? And so, he was thrown into a dungeon. And of course, this represents us, who, when we're forgiven by Christ, we have to recognize our own inadequacy, our own need for forgiveness, our own need for the grace of God in our life. And so it's kind of strange that we would expect God, we want the forgiveness of God in our life, but yet we sometimes struggle to forgive other people. It's kind of almost like we're not recognizing our own inadequacy and our own need for forgiveness. And so in the scripture, Jesus is teaching us that we must forgive others so that we can be forgiven. Even in the Lord's Prayer, he says, he encourages us to say, forgive us, asking God to forgive us of our trespasses, as uh so as we forgive others of their trespasses against us. So yeah, you were.
Yeah. Yeah. So, when you're holding on to like like if you're upset at someone, you're holding on to that. It's a heavy weight to carry. It's a burden, and sometimes letting go and being able to forgive. Because I look at things in life lately as my relationship with someone as the same as my relationship with God. Sometimes someone may have done something wrong to you and they ask for forgiveness, but the same way we would want God to forgive us for whatever we have done to him.
Mm.
We should try to to do that with each other, even though even when it's hard. There were times where it was hard for me to forgive certain people in my life, and I remember having to actually go down on my knees and praying and asking God. I'm like, this is beyond what I can do in this moment, because every time I see that person, every time I think about what they said, I'm upset again. But I want to be able to be in a place where I forgive this person truly. And in order to do that, I need you to help me, because right now it's not something I can do in my own strength. And God was able to do that. I'm not just saying this, but he was able to help me to help me to be able to forgive certain people. And I just find that the more we pray, the more we study the word, the more we grow in our faith. The closer we get to God, the more he shapes us, the more he changes us. And you know he helps us to be better people. And I'm certainly not the same person I was yesterday. I can see a growth in myself. And sometimes God surrounds you with certain people who help you in that. Earlier, in a few years back, I've been in a situation where I my my roommates, they wanted to live separately. And I was also in a situation where my study permit was up, and if that was up, I couldn't work. And it felt like, okay, if I'm not working, I don't have an income. How am I gonna go look for another place to live now? And it felt very stressful in the moment. There was lots of tension. And we tend to look at it in the moment as, oh, everything just feels like a mess. But sometimes, like when I look back at that time now, I'm I'm grateful, because I can see God's hand. When you sometimes you need to stand a little distance, and you just look back and you see that everything sometimes is meant to happen for a reason. And
Mm.
I saw that when I thought about it, I ended up moving in with some friends, and I only knew these people for months before all this happened, and but these people took me in. We weren't even as close as at the time. They took me in. We uh, I never even had to pay rent or anything. They welcomed me. They made me feel like a part of their family. You know, and God led me to an employer who, and God made helped me to make such a great impression to this employer, to the point where he was willing to sponsor me. And the whole process of the sponsorship was very, it seemed close to impossible, but somehow, because I was dealing with a software that was very outdated. It's hard to like get someone else to do the job, and I was able to, and God blessed me to be in a position where I was able to learn to do to use the software in within like a period of maybe 1 to 2 days. And so, God made that possible for me to make such a good impression to this employer, for him to sponsor me. And, within a little while, I got through with, my work permit. I got everything in place. I ended up moving to my own place, but the thing is, I feel like in that moment, in that season, sometimes God redirects your steps and draws you closer to his other children, because this is now my circle of friends, and we do everything together. We celebrate everything together. We pray for each other when we need to. We fast for each other, and these were the type of people I feel like I've been praying for to have in my life, and God surrounded me with such people. They're always there for me when I need them. We have each other's back. And I'm grateful. I'm truly grateful for that. And so, yeah, sometimes things happen in our life, and we may choose to think that, oh, why is this happening to me? But I will say, if I didn't have all these experiences that I had in my past, all those, I wouldn't have a testimony to share today with you. I
Amen.
wouldn't have something to say to give God the glory for. 13 years, it was a long time, but there's so much power in that name. But yeah.
Yeah, wow, amazing. What fascinates me about Priya's testimony is the fact that no one preached the gospel to her. No one came to her and taught her about Jesus. It seems like she kind of stumbled upon Jesus, and she sort of like learned about him on her own, and kind of like developed a relationship with him before, you know, really sort of, getting around Christian communities and circles and friendships. So that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. And I hope you guys will be able to draw some fruit from that. If you guys like this video and these type of contents, you know, like the video, share it, comment if you have dealt with situations like this before. If you know people who have dealt with situations like this before, share the video with other people. And just full disclosure, we this is something we plan on doing, and so if you have a testimony or something like that that you would want to share, we would be happy to kind of hear about it. If you message us or anything like that, or leave any comments or anything like that, we'll try to connect with you guys and talk with you guys. We are crazy busy, so we're not able to respond like immediately, but we'll try to get around to responding as soon as we can, and just try to like figure out if it's something that we can share on our platform and whatnot. But thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for listening to this testimony. I know it's a long one. I hope you guys were blessed. And yeah, that's it. God bless. Thank you, Priya. God bless.